Alrighty, and we're on. So simple as that. James.
Hello, Johnny.
So James O'Leary, Cameron Stoddart. Scott. Sorry, my bad. Fuck, what was I thinking Stoddart? I do know a Stoddart. Who am I thinking of?
It's definitely a lot better than Scott, mate. So
Why? What's wrong with Scott?
oh, nothing's wrong with Scott, mate. But a little bit more colour to it,
Yeah, fair. All right, so James, I know you from. I think we first met at probably one of the Grapple Manias where you were obviously being our little medic.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah, we probably did meet there.
Before that, maybe before that.
I feel like we've known each other longer than that, but I'm not sure, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay. And you've got your own little physio and rehab, and we're wearing the singlets today. But for those of you that aren't tuning in or watching, you can find out more. It's at Undisputed.
Yeah, it's Undisputed Performance and Rehab.
Yep.
It's a physiotherapy, strength and conditioning. Started it up about a year and a half ago now. It was actually born in grappling education.
Yep.
In the back there, and sort of just built it up to the point now where we expanded it out, and I'm operating out of medical practice and then subleasing a gym in Tarrant Point as well. So
Yeah, wow.
yeah, it's going pretty good.
Yeah. So how many years has that been going? It hasn't been long, right?
Nah, so it sort of had the birth of it was a little bit unsuspecting in a way. Like it all sort of started out. I was talking to Keller and he was saying, or we were both saying, like, oh, it'd be good to have a physio sort of helping out the team a little bit at competitions and things like that. So I was doing a bit of comp coverage for the boys down at just like whatever comps they were doing, ADCC or whatever. And then that sort of just escalated to the point where like, well, it would be cool if we had a space in the gym for me to see the boys. And then we started to build out a space, and then that kind of kept escalating until we built out like the full room and set it all up. And then from my side of things, it continued to escalate where I was getting people that weren't just from grappling education wanting my services. And then I was like, well, I kind of need a gym now.
Yeah.
So then it just escalated further, and yeah.
Okay.
Now here we are.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. And Cam, so you do a couple of different things. So you obviously, are you a nurse or what are you?
Yeah, so currently a nurse unit manager at St George Public Hospital. So I work in the haematology department there. Went to Wollongong University, did my Bachelor's of Nursing there.
Yep.
And I've worked through some oncology nursing, respiratory nursing, and then did a 3-year bout in intensive care all through COVID. And then did a little bit of a future managers program at St George Hospital there. Mm-hmm. And now found myself in a secondment, I guess, in the management position there. So, yeah, doing that. I guess I'll say I'm doing that on the side.
Yeah, you are. Let's talk about the fun thing now.
Yeah, and I guess the real drive at the moment in life is to become an Olympic bobsledder for Australia.
Yep. So is that sport? Is it called bobsledding or is it bobsleighing?
So it's technically bobsleigh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
But yeah. The shortening is bobsled. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So I think we'll probably kick it off with that topic because that's the topic that both James and I we were talking about it a little bit before. We got so many questions about, right? So I think for most people, their introduction to bobsledding is Cool Runnings.
Absolutely.
And
that was mine as well, mate. So
I've watched that movie at least 1,000 times.
won't lie, it's actually downloaded on my phone, and it's one of the most watched movies for me too. So yeah.
So how do you even get into that sport?
Well, yeah, like literally, like I watched Cool Runnings. Not that Cool Runnings was at all involved in me getting involved in the sport, but I was first kind of exposed to it when a guy who we actually went to school with, his sister, and he was a couple of years above us. He was training at the same gym as me, and he was part of the Australian bobsled team in 2018. And so he was a brakeman for that team. He was training, and I was just watching his approach through, the 18 months leading up to the Olympic Games, and just saw how incredible his performance was, like particularly in the gym and all the stuff that he was doing. Mm-hmm. And then at that point in time, I was actually rehabbing a pretty significant back injury that stopped me from playing rugby league. And then he came back after competing at the Olympics for Australia and got in my ear and was like, hey, mate, I reckon you'd be all right at this. Why don't you think about giving it a go? So I literally dwelled on it for the next 12 months, and then I ripped the Band-Aid off and was like, shit, if I'm going to give this a go, I've really got to figure it out. So I reached out to the Australian Federation and Heath, who's the acting CEO of the federation, led me in the right direction to get over to a camp over in Whistler. And so my first real exposure to bobsledding was on the fastest track in the world, being Whistler, under an ex-Australian, 4-time Canadian Olympic coach, Chris Spring, and under his guidance, he taught me how to drive a bobsled.
So I guess, and I don't even know what all the positions are, right? So there's a 2-man version and there's a 4-man version, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And so then so in a 2-man version, you'd have the person at the back, the brakeman?
Yep.
And then the driver.
Myself, the driver.
Okay,
The
so
pilot.
you're
It's
the
actually
pilot.
called the pilot.
We
yeah.
can actually demo if you want.
Huh?
You need us to demo?
You guys want to sit in front of each other?
It's a normal Saturday
We can
night.
fit the mics between us, I reckon.
So then what happens in a 4-man bobsled then?
So there's the pilot, myself at the front, and
Yep.
then there's the brakemen are the big muscly guys at the back that run the sled in, right? So there's a 2-man position, a 3-man position, and then the 4-man position.
Okay.
So you'd classify the last guy as the brakeman, but they're all under that umbrella of being a brakeman.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's those 3 real big muscly fellas, and then that one guy at the back that's actually the brakeman who rips the brakes right at the end.
Okay, so the other 2 guys, what will they do?
They jump in.
They're not
And that's it.
breaking at
They
all, are
jump
they? They're
in
trying to
and
make
they-
it go faster.
That's it. They jump in and they hold on.
Yeah.
That's it. So it's all about that power off the line. So the start is literally between 5 and 6, or not even, probably about 4.5 seconds to 5.5 seconds.
Yep.
So you're getting the sled from dead weight to moving 40 or 50 k's an hour.
Wow.
So these guys are incredibly powerful and very, very fast. So the idea is obviously we hit the sled off the line, and the 2 guys that are on the side of the sled are just hammering the sled in, and they're the first to jump in, and then the guy at the back jumps in as well, and then it's up to me to make sure everyone gets down the right way up.
What point do you jump in?
So I'm actually the first person to jump in.
Okay.
Yeah, in the 2-man and in the 4-man.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's like a little pilot bar that sits out the front, and that's where I push off. So I'm holding onto that bar, and I jam into that, and then as we all hit together, simultaneously, then obviously the sled goes from that dead weight, moving fast, and then it's a timing thing. That's one thing about bobsled that people think you just run and you just jump in. There is so many meticulous little skills that you have to nail, and one of them particularly is that timing of getting in and actually hitting the sled at the same time. So that dead weight you're talking about in a 4-man, the 4-man's like 350, almost 400 kilos, and there's 4 guys who weigh close to the same amount, and you've just got to rip that thing off the top and just got to get it moving.
Wait,
right?
so the sled itself weighs 450 kilos?
No, 350.
350.
Yeah, 300, roughly about 350 kilos for a 4-man. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
wow.
you've got about 350, 400 kilos in it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's 800 kilos hurtling, or 700 to 800 kilos hurtling down a mountain.
Yeah. At 150, 160 k's an hour, depending on the track.
And okay, and so
Pretty cool.
one of the things that when we were chatting before, you were talking about the brakeman, right? Like I didn't actually realize this. So there's a big lever that they pull, and it drops like these teeth down that will then bite into the ice to slow you guys down.
Yeah.
So then when it comes to driving these sleds, what controls are there? Like how do you control it?
So there's 2 little D-rings. So kind of like on a pulley system, there's like rope or bungees that connect to the driving mechanism in the front part of the sled, and that turns the runners that the sled glides on. So that's what I hold on to, and that's what I steer the sled with. So you're talking very small, intricate movements to actually turn this monster of a thing going down at 150 k's an hour, but it's very precise, very small movements. And then obviously we call it the Robin Hood when you're in a real bad spot. It's like that red line, and it's like you're about to tip over here and whack something, so you're just absolutely reefing this thing. So there's only a certain amount of give in these in this pulley system. So I could pull the thing all the way back here, but it's not actually going to turn too much further than how far it actually allows it to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, very small, intricate D-rings that maneuver that steering mechanism that's in the front of the sled.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, like for people that listening, and we can't really show the video now, but I'm going to get this video off Cam later. But he showed me this video of you guys basically just sliding down the rest of the mountain on your side or your heads, basically.
Yeah.
So if you fuck up, like you've got some pretty angry people, right?
Yeah, well, look, you definitely know about it. It is the sport though, which is it's the harsh reality of it. Like it's a dangerous sport. There is that risk of crashing. So getting in the back, being a brakeman, like you have to be tough. You have to have that resilience to, if you do crash, like if I'm all right and you don't have a concussion, then we're getting straight back in the truck, going straight to the top and just going down again.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Like, would you equate a crash to the same as like a knockout in MMA or something like that, or you can actually just get back in and go again?
Well, there is concussion protocols and things that we have to follow. So the track actually runs those protocols. So they test us and make sure that we're okay. There's baseline testing that we have to do every year. And some of these crashes are very, very heavy. So some of these guys can have significant concussions and not be able to get back in the sled for 7 days or whatever. So you could say definitely. So depending on the track, depending where you crash, how you crash, there's like some nice, I'll say nice lightly, but like rolls that like you just like might just tip and you just kind of just slide on your side and then you're just gliding down the rest of the track. But in one of the races in Whistler that I was in, 10 out of the, I think, 11 or 12 sleds that raced on that day actually crashed. So, and some of these guys have raced in the Olympics and World Cup circuits before, and they were crashing at one of the corners of the track that is the most dangerous, and they're going upwards of 145, close to 150 k's an hour, and they're coming off these corners and just absolutely slamming themselves against the next corner. So you're talking 30, 40, 50 meters between two corners. So these guys are coming off one and then like just flying straight onto the other. So depending on how you land, where you land, it definitely can be pretty similar to a knockout, I guess. Yeah, for sure.
And how long are the tracks?
Anywhere between kind of like 900 meters to like 1.4, 1.5 kilometers. So again, just depending on where it is in the world, how it's made, there's specific guidelines that the governing body of the world has in place for like tracks to have. So they have to have like particular types of corners, a particular type of difficulty and things like that as well. So I don't know when the last track was built, but all of the tracks have been around for years and years and years and years. So there hasn't actually been a track built like in today's day and age, other than actually the track that the 2026 Winter Olympics is going to be at in Milan in Italy. That track was actually decommissioned and it's been like ripped apart. So the Italian government is actually racing the clock to actually get the track done by I think next season. So not the season coming, which is October through to March, the following year in October. They've got to get a bobsled track up and running and financials and everything sorted so we can race on it this season before the Olympics to actually qualify for the games. Yeah. So.
Yeah, well, so, because that was one of the things that I was like, where do you even do that? Like, there's nowhere in Australia, right? Like, there's not a bobsled track in Australia at all.
No, definitely not. Honestly, like, all jokes aside, the closest thing to a bobsled track is the Jamboree Toboggan. Yeah. Like, at the water park there. Like, it's the dry track. It's literally just, like, metal. And, yeah, you go down that, but, you're going 10 Ks, 20 Ks an hour on that thing. But that's honestly the closest thing.
Cam's got a season pass. He's down there every weekend.
That's where Cam is every weekend. He's like a regular.
After your 12th birthday down there, mate, I think I was locked in.
Yeah, he's been a member there every year since.
Every year since. But yeah, there is no tracks in Australia. Like I was saying before, the closest track is in South Korea. In terms of ease of getting there, expenditure, like it's a very, very expensive sport. The best track for us to be at for those reasons is Whistler in Canada. So, 15-hour flight away. It's expensive just to get there, let alone to rent a sled and actually put runners on ice is...
Oh, so you guys don't even have your own sled? You got to rent one?
So at the moment, the Australian Federation has purchased a sled. So we can rent it off them, like the athletes can rent it off them. But I don't personally own a sled as yet. But definitely
is that coming?
Definitely in the works. The conversations are being had, and obviously if the financials can be sorted sooner rather than later, then obviously that goal is very, very close to being ticked. So
yeah. So out of curiosity, like how many fellow Aussies would there be that are in this sport?
For the males, there's probably about 8 of us.
Okay.
So
this is like a ultra niche. Ultra niche. Like we're talking 8 and 26, 27 million people.
yeah, correct. So look, ideally, like you've got to be crazy enough to try it, right? You got to be crazy enough and tough enough to want to give it a go. So the guys that are involved at the moment, I think we've got 3 or 4 guys or 5, including myself, that are newer to the sport. And then we've got 3 or 4 that are just the powerhouses, the workhorses that have been with the last Australian pilot that tried to qualify for the last games, and they're going again. And they just absolutely love the sport. They're incredible guys. I can't fault any of them. They're just honestly some of the best blokes I've ever come across, and they're just so dedicated to actually being professional athletes in a sport that is non-existent in Australia. So, in saying that though, if anybody wants to give it a try, let me know.
So as a pilot, of the 8, so so 3 of them are all, I guess, brakemen, so to speak. How many other pilots are there? Is it just you or?
No, so there's 2 of us at the moment. There's myself and another fella named Reese. Reese was a brakeman for the last Australian pilot, and now he's jumping in the front seat to give piloting a go too. So again, he's a fantastic fella. He's an incredible athlete. He's played rugby sevens for Australia. Real powerful fella. So there's 2 of us at the moment, and then the rest of the boys are the brakemen. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just spun out, and because the other thing that I didn't really think about was that you guys need weight to go faster.
Yeah.
Contrary to a lot of other sports, like whether it's race car driving or jockeying or something like that, you want the jockey to be as light as possible, but for you guys to actually get more speed, you need to have more weight.
Yeah, that's right. So it is a very fine line. The sled and athletes together get weighed at the end of a run on race day, and there is a minimum and a maximum weight that the combination can be.
Oh,
so
really?
If, let's say, for example, myself and Jamie got into a sled, I think for the 2-man we could get up to 400 kilos or 375 or something like that for the amount of combined weight with the sled and the 2 athletes. So how you divvy that up is totally dependent on the team. So if I weigh 105 kilos and then Jamie weighs 100 kilos, that's 205. Sled being about 170, 180 kilos for a 2-man sled, then you can add those weights together and make sure that you need to try and be underneath that maximum weight. So it's a very fine line. You've obviously got to be big enough and fast enough to move the sled and move it well, and obviously be able to move well in your own body as well. So it is a very, very fine line. But some of the brakemen are 110 kilos, 6'5", like absolute monsters, and they're still able to fold themselves in half to get in the back of this tiny little metal sled that or carbon fiber sled that you're jumping in and going down a track with.
Yeah.
So very, very difficult kind of, I guess, weight cutting as well. Like a lot of the female athletes do a lot of weight cutting to actually get themselves to be underneath that maximum weight. So the weights change obviously for male and female. So a lot of them do actually do weight cuts going into races as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell us a little.
Wouldn't that diminish their performance?
Yeah, or absolutely, it does. I mean, again, these guys are professional athletes, so they've been through the processes and know how to do it. Obviously, without a full-time nutrition coach or something like that for the team, or somebody who is very in tune with how to do that safely, it is dangerous still. So I know for a fact, like seeing the girls in the season that we were just overdoing, like that some of them do restrict eating to actually try and make those weights. So yeah, absolutely, it would diminish their performance for sure. So
yeah, wow. What were you going to say, James?
Yeah, I was going to say, tell us a little bit about like the strength numbers that you guys need to hit to qualify.
So for Australia, we do have like some numbers that we're supposed to be hitting. So ideally, it's for a back squat, a power clean, and what was the other one? But if we go with the back squat, so ideally for an elite athlete, so there's kind of the 3 subcategories. You're talking like beginner, intermediate, and elite. The standard per se for us is, I think it's 160 kilos or 170 kilos for 3 reps. But on the last testing day that we did, we had some of the guys that are in the back doing 210, 220 kilos for 3 reps on a back squat. That said, in terms of those numbers, they're absolute freaks. The power clean is, I think, over 100 kilos is kind of standard for us. But again, some of these guys are doing 140s, 150s for a power clean from the floor. They're just absolutely insane. And then there is specific testing for like your 40 meter dash, flying 40s, flying 30s, all of that. So ideally you want to be around that. For a flying 30, I think it's like 3.7, 3.8 seconds, somewhere around there, which again, you're moving pretty quick. So to be 100, 110 kilos, be able to move that weight and then still be able to run that fast.
Incredible.
Very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a lot of force off the mark, right? Like it's going from basically 0 to as fast as you can go in a very short
0
period
to
of
100
time.
real quick.
What's that runway like to get going? Like how many meters is that?
Depending on the track again, but it ranges anywhere between kind of like your 30 to 50 meters.
Okay.
And that's when you start, there's like grooves in the ice that are actually carved into the ice. So the runners, you can't deviate out of that unless like you're ripping it out of these grooves. So it's the kind of safeguards you actually going down straight in the start. So for Whistler, for example, I think it's about 35, 40 meters. But again, depending on the track, you're talking like it's a slow decline and then it just drops. So you kind of run to get over this ridge, and then me and my brakeman have to be in before our sled comes out of the grooves. Otherwise, it just completely like throws us out, and we could just hit a wall straight away. And then you're talking about momentum. Anything that hinders that momentum, you're losing speed. So the faster you go, more momentum you've got, the quicker you get down the track.
Yeah.
So getting into the sled before those grooves end is like absolutely crucial. Yeah. So roughly about 40 meters.
Yep.
Yeah.
And do people have like a preference in terms of like, would you want to be going first before other sleds have gone down the track? Like, does that impact the track performance as well?
Yeah, it definitely does. So depending on the weather as well, it can play absolute havoc on sled speed. So if it's really, really sunny and really hot, then obviously the ice is going to melt, so it's going to slow down. And as well, if it's really, really cold and there's a lot of moisture in the air, then it's going to freeze on the ice and it'll actually slow the sled down too. So it's very specific ice conditions that make the sled go really fast. So if you're first out of, say, 30 sleds going down, then the ice will deteriorate throughout all those runs. So ideally, you'd want to be going off first or within those first kind of 5 to 10 sleds, just so you can kind of get the more pristine, looked after ice as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do they manage that in the Olympics? Like, does it depend on where you qualify and then that determines the run order?
So I think with the Olympics particularly, like it's a random draw for the first heat. And then from that, it's the slowest sled goes first. And then the fastest sled goes last. So it kind of, in a way, somewhat evens the playing field. But particularly in the Olympics, the conditions are obviously a lot more... I guess they look after the ice a lot better. There's a lot more people available to actually prepare the ice and actually keep it in pristine condition in between runs. Whereas obviously at a track in Whistler in February, there's not that many people. Like the track employs people to work there, but obviously they're not at every single corner and making sure every single mark is filled in and perfect for the next run. So yeah, that's how that works. So it's a random draw first heat, and then the slowest head goes first, and then the fastest goes last, and it continues again for heat 3. And then it's only the top 20 sleds that actually get to do their fourth run in the heat. So if you don't qualify above 20th place in that third heat, then you're pretty much out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. And like from a funding perspective, so like did the AIS or the government kick in any sort of funding for the sport?
Look, obviously just starting out in the sport, a lot of those governing bodies want to see results.
Yeah.
So without the results, they're not going to pump money into a sport. So at the moment, for the male team, there's no funding from the government. The federation does their absolute best with making sure we can have some form of money that comes to us, and it helps us a long way. But ideally, better results we get, the more funding we'll get, the more people we'll see looking at us. And at the moment, the females are getting a lot more funding than us because they're actually they're more established in the sport. There's a really fantastic driver at the moment, Bree Walker, I think she just came 5th in the World Championships over in Europe. So, she gets a lot of the funding from the government for the sport of bobsledding, which makes sense. You put your chips into the bucket that you're going to get most outcome from. So, for us at the moment, it's mostly, I'd say probably about 95% self-funded.
Yep.
And that 5% just is divvied out to us from the federation if there's any money left at the end of the season kind of thing. So it is really difficult. Obviously, working as a nurse pays all right. But, you know, a lot of my savings and everything have gone into this sport so far. So it makes it really, really difficult for me to be able to really put my soul and heart into this because, you know, I obviously still have to work my job, go home and training for 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon. And then, you know, it's just that monotonous cycle. Like you just get into it and you grind away with it because it's that love and the drive. But obviously we all can't be full-time sponsored athletes. So, yeah.
So when you start getting into a sport like that and it's like, there would be plenty of people that would be like, what are you doing? There's no money in that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Like family would have definitely said it to you, I'm sure.
Oh, look, I mean, like mum and dad are always going to support me in any venture that I take, which is absolutely fantastic. But there's definitely been a lot of people, like, you know, particularly mates and stuff that are just like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that? Like, you know, you're spending all this money. And, you know, we are at a time in our lives where it's, you know, you're starting to think about settling down and, you know, buying a house and all that kind of stuff. And you know, that's all those kind of dreams that me and my partner have had are just kind of put on pause for a minute. And she's so supportive of me and my dreams, which is absolutely incredible. And I can't thank her enough for that. But, you know, obviously we've wanted to progress our lives too. But, there's a lot of people that turn around and just go, like, do you win money when you win a World Cup event or like what? And you're like, no, you win, you know, like a nice glass trophy and it's got written all over it and all that stuff. But a lot of the money per se comes from sponsorships.
Okay.
So that's where a lot of, for our country anyway, for the big countries like Germany and the US and stuff like that, they are they are full-time athletes. And it shows because they get their results.
Yeah.
Right. So they've got really designed programs to like groom the young athletes into these incredible bobsledders, like they've got for all other sports as well. They've just got money going straight into these sports that they can really get the best out of their athletes, which is fair. So if they can spend the money, then they're going to get the results too. So, it is really difficult in that sense, and people do just kind of turn their head and it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why do you want to do that? Like, what makes you want to go over there and spend all your money to get nothing out of it? And it is that thrill, it's that drive, it's that journey that I've been on, particularly from like back injury to then being told I can't, like not being selected to play in football teams I've always wanted to play in, and then just down in the dumps. Then I just pulled myself around and now going for something so incredible that nobody else really has thought about doing, or people have done in the past, but again, is so niche. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Oh, it's look, you know, I think I was saying this to you guys when we were getting coffee, right? It's like when you're young and you don't necessarily have the same commitments of like your own kids to worry about and things like that. Like, set your goals as fucking high as you can possibly set them. Because for every person that says, oh, you got no chance of achieving them, there is every single same opportunity for you to achieve those goals.
Yep.
And, you know, the simple fact that, it may come true is reason enough to try anyway.
Yeah.
Because then when you do, you know, this progress in life and move into those later stages where it's like, you know, as I was saying about friends, you know, like when you have kids, straight away, like your friends that don't have kids, you feel like you're a bit like older than them, not in the sense of like your age or it ages you or anything. It's just your priorities shift, right? And so, you know, when you've got this opportunity to pursue goals and opportunities wholeheartedly, do it.
Yeah.
You know, because otherwise, if you don't, all you're going to live with is regret after.
Yeah.
So you might as well pursue it, because for every version of the universe where it doesn't happen, there is equally a version where it does happen.
Yeah.
And the only thing that will limit you is your own belief in terms of where you can actually get to, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's you know, to pursue something like that is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like the cool writing story basically. But
it definitely is, mate. But you know, like you said, it's incredible to have that support network around you when you can have it too. So like, you know, having a best mate in Jamie that is so interested in my development as well, and now working a little bit closer with him to kind of work on some deficits that we found and building together. It's taking other people on that journey with me that I want to be around me, and that I know are going to benefit from it. But also, obviously, I'm going to benefit so greatly from having somebody who actually cares about my well-being and my performance in my corner all the time. Like it's second to none. And it's so good to have him on my side as well. You know, we've known each other since we were, what did we say, it was
Year 5 or
nine.
something.
Yeah, 9
Year
or 10.
5, yeah. We
So-
actually lived on the same street.
Yeah, for a little bit there too.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I do want to talk about the performance aspect, but I think because we brought it up, we might as well rehash some of these old stories because there's probably plenty that you two can share about
100%.
each other. So, you guys met in what, year 5?
Yeah. So when I was growing up, I moved around a lot through primary school. I went to a different primary school every year.
How come?
I don't, just my family just moved around a lot. Like
Oh.
there was a bit that went on and whatnot, but we sort of we just moved around a lot and
So different cities or different suburbs?
both. Yeah.
Okay.
So there was moved around different suburbs. Moved down to Melbourne for a little bit. Went to school down there for 2 years or so, and then moved back up and settled down in the Shire. That's when I moved in. That's when I went to St. Pat's, where we both went to school.
Yep.
That's where we met in year 5. Yeah.
And then, obviously, you know, from where you guys are today versus year 5, like a lot's happened since then. But I guess in school, you know, like, what would your teachers say about you guys? Like, what kind of kids were you?
Interesting. We were good kids.
Yeah, I genuinely think we were actually pretty bright kids. We weren't like we'd always have fun. We were amongst the hooligans and ratbags, if you want to say, but like we were just as much them. But I think we just knew how to play the game a little bit better, 100%. And we just knew when to pull back and stop, and then we wouldn't actually get in trouble for a lot of things either. So
it helps when you get like the semi-decent marks as well. You can kind of get away with it a bit more, I reckon.
Oh, I mean, like I like just scraped through like with a lot of my grades, like, but
That's not true.
well, you know, like you're talking C's and B's, whereas like you know having a best mate that's pulling A's, and if I was lucky, he'd maybe jag a B like here and there, and I'm like, I got that too. So it was good having somebody who you know was part of like that top class, smart kid kind of class, and so like he'd just fly under the radar all the time. And
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So you were slightly more academic, you would say, James?
Yeah, I'd say it was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No doubt, absolutely he was. But it just came to him naturally, right? Like he still played sport, he still did everything, but it just clicked for you. I don't know. I couldn't really retain a lot of information like with books and stuff, and like I was just so driven with sport, but then like he'd be doing exactly the same thing as me, but then just jagging A's here and there, and he'd be like, I didn't really study, and you're like, fuck you, man.
No, I did study a lot when I was in school, but
See, the truth comes out now.
It did come
now it
naturally
comes,
as
now
well.
it comes.
That's good.
Yeah, okay.
I actually don't know what I was going to say, to be
Oh,
honest.
that's all right.
got all shy when you started saying I was smart. I was like, stop talking me up.
So then when it came to like, you know, finishing school and things like that, so you went to University of Wollongong to study nursing,
Yep.
and then did you go straight to doing physio?
Yeah, no, I went into medical science first.
Med-Sci, okay.
Did a bachelor of that at Sydney Uni.
Yep.
Then I had a year off, and I was doing a lot of competing in jiu-jitsu and just training in combat sports mostly.
Yep.
I was just super into it at the time and was just sort of like having a bit of a break. And then after that, I went back to uni and did physio masters at Sydney as well. I was actually like when I first went into university, I was like thinking about becoming a dentist.
Okay.
So I started working like for a dentist, did that for like 2 or 3 years, but then decided, no, I don't want to look into people's mouths.
Sick of looking at people's mouths.
So yeah, and then I just changed my mind and pursued physio after that.
Mm. Was there and like, you know, was there any particular reason why you gravitated towards those medical style fields?
Yeah, I suppose like coming through high school and things and all that, I was like interested in science a lot. So I did physics, chemistry,
Biology?
biology.
Yep.
Actually, no, I did biology in uni. I didn't do biology at high school. But then I was like good at science and I enjoyed it. So then I naturally fell into wanting to do a science degree, and then medical science was something that sort of that took my interest. And then I thought that was a good starting point for me because I didn't know exactly which direction I wanted to go down. So that was a bit more broad. And then I think the whole physio thing really came about after I was doing a lot of training, getting injured a lot, seeing physios. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I can probably, chase that a little bit more.
Yeah. So then, when did the combat sports come into it for you? So what age were you when you started?
Yeah, combat sports was pretty much as soon as I finished high school. Growing up through high school, I played like rugby league, and we played sort of alongside each other, but I was always a year younger.
Okay.
And then I went into AFL as well, which I sort of picked up when I was down in Melbourne. I came back, played a bit of AFL, and then after school finished, I got right into combat sports. I actually started at CFS with John Levin.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Shout out to John.
Shout out to John, yeah. And yeah.
It's like an institution over there. He's been around for a long time,
Yeah,
John.
he has, yeah. So I popped down there with a good mate of mine, Tommy Kovac.
Yes.
And we started together, and then...
The brothers.
Yeah, the Kovac brothers, yeah. So his brother and then my brother as well, Kane.
Okay.
They started training with us there as well. And then, it started as kickboxing, and then we were getting beat up by these jiu-jitsu guys. Typical story. So then we started doing jiu-jitsu, and then it just escalated from there. Just loved it since. And then my mum started dating someone, Jason Naylor, and he has 2 boxing gyms, No Limits Gym in Richmond and Sutherland, and they sort of opened up another gym right before COVID hit, and then we all kind of started working there and training there, and then I was still doing a little bit with grappling education, and just kept sort of doing it more so for enjoyment and whatnot, and then nowadays it's hard to get in and train, to be honest.
So when you go through that process of like, so there's a lot of when you do physio, right? Like there's only really 2 options. You're either going to work for yourself at the end of it, or you got to go and work with other people. Like generally when you go to most physio studios, there will always be like a student of some sort, an intern, so to speak, that's learning their way through the ropes, and then it's up to them to work out, are they going to continue working there, or are they going to go out and start their own thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess for you, what was the sort of motivation to go and say, okay, I'm gonna do my own thing versus work for somebody else?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, like I had the thing going with I had Undisputed cracking along, and that was going really well, and that was building up when I was at grappling education, and I was still working at another practice, and then I was sort of like at the point where in my first practice where I wanted to see a little bit more of that athletic population. And at that practice was a lot more just like gen pop stuff. And I sought out an internship with Athletes Authority, and I started doing this internship with them about 6 months ago now. It's just about to sort of come to completion. And that was a really good opportunity for me because they're a clinic that essentially only sees athletes, amateur or professional athletes in physiotherapy and strength and conditioning. And I learned a lot from a lot of good people there. And a few months into that internship, they offered me a job working with a rugby club and seeing a few patients in the clinic, but also continuing to learn through their internship and whatnot. So when I took on that internship, obviously that was originally unpaid. In the other hours I had in my week, I needed to make money. So the way that looked for me was continuing to go down the path with my own business and continue expanding that out. And then I ended up working alongside Luke Murford, who's a guy that runs a gym called Evolve Human Performance. So I sort of use his gym space down there and lease that off him to see patients out of there. And then I've also kind of formed a partnership with Kingsway Family Practice, which is just down at Cronulla, and just working along the medical team there, which is really cool as well. Yeah.
It's really interesting, the high performance thing, So I don't know if you know Tony or you, but he's been on the podcast before, but he was the high performance manager at the Bulldogs for a while and did lots of stuff with the different NRL teams and things like that. And, I think when we're growing up, we don't really pay attention to all these little things. It's just like when you're doing sport in school, right? And they tell you, oh yeah, we're going to do this warm up, and then we're going to stretch, And like when you're young, like you don't need to warm up and stretch. Like everything's already limber, you know, like everything's like soft and malleable.
It takes me an hour to warm up.
You ran over to the team anyway.
Yeah. And it's like
just chasing your mate around the fucking posts.
you know, I remember, you know, when you're in school and that you finish the cross country or something, you just lie on the floor like you're dead to the world because you've never run that much in your life.
Yeah.
But like, you know, the best thing to do is to do a cool down. You know, you should be getting up and walking around. Don't let the lactic acid build up and all that sort of stuff. You just take all that for granted as a kid.
Yeah.
But then when you get older, and then it's like, oh shit, that doesn't move quite the right way anymore. And I don't know whether it's an awareness thing because and the reason why I say that is because, so I did I did one of those massage therapy courses at TAFE. I've done a lot of different things, but anyway, I did it with a mate. And it was like, because you get to like, you know, you massage your fellow students, colleagues, and they massage you. It was like you're getting massages like every day of the week almost, right?
What was that course called?
it's just like remedial massage at TAFE.
Yeah.
So if you do remedial massage at TAFE, like when you do your pracs, like it's like, okay, well, today we're looking at arms or shoulders or whatever, and then you get like your arm and your shoulder, you know, worked on.
Yep.
And like you do that every day for however long the course is, and you're like, oh. You know, I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Now I can feel when things aren't right anymore because, like, you know, like you're not aware of it, right?
Yeah.
So, and you would see this a lot, right? Like patients would come in and they wouldn't even be aware that they don't have certain mobility issues.
Yep, definitely.
Because that's just been the norm for them for so long, right?
100%. Yeah.
So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Like sometimes I think, you know, if I never did that, I wouldn't know. But then at the same time, I definitely know when my body isn't feeling right now.
Oh, I find that so much, even just like being a physio and just even when I approach different sports or different activities, I'm always like thinking of it from that lens. So like even like, you know, I've been doing these events and doing the running and all that stuff. And like, I just see all these people going out there and joining run clubs and doing all this stuff. Like it's a massive craze right now. And I'm just like sitting back going, these people just go from not running at all to doing 50 Ks a week, and then they all come in with like stress injuries and stuff like that. And you're just like, you almost can't enjoy some aspects of life anymore because you're thinking about, well, there's a good injury risk there.
Yeah. James is there with a bum bag full of business cards.
Literally.
I've joined these rub clubs too, and he's like handing out his business cards.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like, yeah, you don't really, you sort of take it for granted especially when you're young. Like, you don't know. And then now, like, when you want to take your, whether it's sport or your hobbies, even if you're doing like combat sports as a hobby, when you start to try and take those things a little bit more seriously, you have to actually put some attention to these things. Because, I think as with anything, right, there is no one modality that is going to give you everything that you need, right? And it's all like, it's almost like there's two principles at play here. You know, you almost want to, you wish it was as simple as the keep it simple, stupid principle, where you could just like do this one exercise that's going to work out your entire body and everything is going to be perfect. You know, that's the silver bullet. Everybody's looking for that. And that's why like all of those marketing gimmicks on Instagram, like there's obviously a reason why, you know, people run those ads. They obviously must be working. Like there are people out there buying those things and doing those things. And then, you know, how many of those have you got to fall for before you realize that, hey, there isn't actually like a silver bullet? You know, you now need to actually get a bit more knowledgeable about what's going on, right? And so, you know, when it comes to you I'm thinking about this in terms of, you know, developing Cam as an athlete, right? There's a lot of testing, I'm guessing, that you guys probably had to do, and
definitely.
You want to talk us through, like, you know, the sort of process and
of course.
And maybe some of the specifics that relate to you, Cam.
Yeah. Well, like particularly for the sport of bobsled, you know, you're talking about running on ice, so. You know, running on a track's one thing and running on grass and road, but running on compacted ice that is literally layered on concrete, you're talking about a lot of stress on your joints.
Sorry, just to think about the shoes there. So is there specific shoes that you guys got to wear?
Yeah, definitely. So it's on the ball of the foot, there's over, I think it's about 150 individual like pins. So like you think about like your athletics track spikes, and they've only got about 6 or 7 or 8. This has 150 individual pinheads that actually help you grip the ice. So there's nothing from the ball of your foot back. So all of that grip is coming literally from the ball of your foot and your toes. So in terms, like, it's a very small area, but even in that position, like if you think about that position of your foot where it's literally just the balls of your foot and your toes hitting every single time, all that stress and force that you're putting through, like your ankles, your knees. Like, you need that stiffness. And that's one thing that we actually realised that I lacked a lot, was a lot of that stiffness and reactivity through, like, my lower body.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, I'm now at a weight where, like, I've been for a fair amount of time, but actually to move that weight well, and that's where Jamie's kind of noticed, like, I'm not moving as well as what I should be, particularly with some of my athletic background. Like, it came to a massive surprise with me seeing some of those, I guess, the differences even in side. So, like, the weakness from my left side to my right, and my stability and all that stuff that, you know, we do take for granted. Like you're saying, when you were young, you just, you know, go for a sprint and do whatever you want and you don't really care about it. But then when you start to really break down those specifics, like, some of this stuff, like, it just baffled me. I was like, how am I so much weaker on that side compared to, you know, my dominant or non-dominant side? Like, one of them's just not working the way that it should be. And that's some of that testing that Jamie got me to go through initially. It was quite eye-opening for me, because I thought, like, you know, I just came back from racing for Australia, and now we had some pretty decent results for, like, a breakout season, you know, looking at, like, the next progressions and all that stuff. And then Jamie was like, all right, well, hang on a sec, let's just go back to the basics and let's see what's actually happening here. And then I was just like, oh, fuck, maybe, like, I'm definitely not as you know, as far ahead as I thought my body was. And so, if anything, it was quite humbling, but now it's almost motivated me more to just be like, well, those 1%ers that we talk about, and that's where people get, you know, those extra tenths and hundredths of a second sometimes in sprinting. And that's what bobsled comes down to. It's those hundredths, those tenths of seconds that literally come down to in a race, and this is where I'm going to get them from. So it was so eye-opening, some of these things that he got me to do, and I was just like, oh, fuck, I really need to do a little bit better here.
Yeah. That's an interesting one, right? Like, I don't know if you ever looked at the study about the London cycling team. That one comes up in heaps of, like, examples.
Was it the British one or the London?
Yeah, for the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
And basically the coach that they had, I can't remember his name now, but, like, anybody can Google it. It's just about, you know, I think they call it the summation of aggregate gains.
Yep.
And they looked at all the little 1%ers that they could do to improve their result. And it could be something stupid like making sure that the team know how to wash their hands correctly.
They got a surgeon to teach them, didn't they?
Yeah. To reduce the likelihood that they'll get sick,
Yep.
which means that they can increase their training time, right? And I think, you know, one of the biggest improvements that people can make to athletic performance is simply consistency, right? Like, I really love the concept of consistency over intensity, because, you know, anybody that wants to start something, when you're motivated, it's really easy to go and get up and go to the gym and go, yeah, I'm going to have a great session, and, you know, you smash yourself, but the problem is the next day when you wake up and DOMS is hit and you go, oh, I don't feel so good today. Yeah. Maybe I'll give the gym a rest, right? And then you don't turn up for 3 days, right? So, yeah, you might have done one session, so let's say you did 1 2-hour session, but then you haven't turned up for the rest of the week. Yeah. You know, you would have been better off just doing a 1-hour session, but then doing a 1-hour session the next day and the next day and the next day, because, you know, if you didn't turn up for 3 days, well, you've done 2 hours over 4 days, whereas the other guy's done 4 hours in 4 days. Yeah. He's doubled your training time, right? And so, you know, basically the premise of that study was basically, that if when you start to aggregate all of these little 1%ers, you can make a really big impact to the overall result, you know, and so I'm guessing, you know, you guys are sort of working on some of those things when you look at, you know, where it could be something small like ankle mobility, right? It's funny, like, you know, people always talk about, like, the stereotype of the Asian squat, you know, like how most Asians can squat, like, all the way down and like be comfortable in that position. Whereas a lot of Caucasian guys don't have that ankle mobility.
Mate, I can't touch
I'd
my
like
toes.
to see you try that. Let's have a go.
See, it's not a stereotype. I'm not being racist. It's actually legit, right?
Have a squat off right now.
Oh, no, I'm good. I've got to warm up for 40 minutes to try to do it.
So, you know, there's like these little genetic things that obviously make an impact. But, you know, having the awareness. I don't know if you've ever looked into this guy. He always comes up on my. I follow him on Instagram. Naudi from Functional Patterns. I just find, like, the stuff that he talks about to be really interesting. He's really, like, abrasive in how he does it. Like, he'll, like, post a video of somebody doing a workout and he's just, like, shaking his head and shit. But that's his, like, marketing strategy. But
that's how he gets the viewer.
Yeah. Like that's his part of his marketing strategy. But he talks about, like, basically, you know, his whole system is called functional patterns. So trying to develop movements that are actually functional for your body. So instead of just, like, doing, like, an isolated deadlift, it might be like there's something else to it that allows you to make it a more functional movement. It's something that I have a little bit of interest in. So at some point I might check it out. And it was actually when I was chatting with Ben Nguyen, the former UFC flyweight. He started doing a little bit of it. So they've got like a centre up in Brisbane. They got one in Sydney, and we were talking about it. I don't think we talked about it on the podcast, but we were talking about it like just training and what he's doing to keep his body in good shape and things like that. And he said, it's made him think a lot about his biomechanics, right? Oh. And as I said, like I think in a lot of those sporting endeavors, like I feel like there's an element of sometimes people do too much of something that isn't actually going to benefit the sport. Yeah. So, and the example I can give you from that is like, say, like in combat sports, if you're going for and doing like really big strength and conditioning sessions, they're not helping you to get more efficient at the movements that you need in your sport. Versus if you're like isolating like the things that you need. So I don't know. If we say jiu-jitsu, like talk about technical stand-up, right? If you're doing Turkish get-ups, that's a more relevant movement to your technical stand-up than perhaps doing a deadlift.
Yeah,
right?
I think that brings up a good sort of argument, and I think there's a time and place for both things, and it's about getting the balance between, like, a Turkish get-up, whilst it's specific to the sport, you've also got to have that other element where it's like, well, you can't get that strong doing a Turkish get-up at the end of the day because you're like in your legs, for example, because you're restricted by the mobility of your shoulder and the strength of your shoulder. If you're just trying to develop pure leg strength, which is probably pretty important, then that's where a deadlift becomes important. But that's not to say, I need to go and deadlift every single day. Yeah. Because then you're not going to be able to train jiu-jitsu or whatever your sport is effectively. So it really is about finding that balance, and there's always a billion ways to do things. And if you can nail the basics and then sprinkle some of that fancy stuff on top, I think that usually gets you a pretty good result.
So when it comes to you and like when you're looking at your clients, right? How do you take into account, like, do you have to like go through and talk to them about training loads?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's one of the biggest things, like, because you can design the best program in the world, but the best program is the one that gets done and the one that gets done effectively. A lot of these guys, particularly see it in jiu-jitsu, they just want to go out and train all day, every day, twice a day, 5 hours a day. Like, and if you think about any other professional athlete, like no one trains like that because you just get injured. So one of the big things that I'll talk to, regardless of the sport, whether it's like running, jiu-jitsu, boxing, whatever, it's like, let's just pull back a little bit on the amount of training volume you're actually doing. And let's make it a little bit more like quality over quantity. And look at how can you change intensity between training sessions as well. So you might want to get more time practicing skills, drilling things, whatnot, but like not everything has to be at 100%. And you save those big sessions for a few times a week, for example, and then you have your S&C work on top of that. So it's like you can't just keep adding things on more and more and more. Like something else has to drop a little bit, otherwise you just burn out and you just can't stick to the program, or you just can't actually get better. Yeah,
I feel like at least from like a, let's say, athlete's perspective now, like there is so many studies and things available and things like that now that show this will improve this, so X will improve Y. And then some people see this, or they'll see it on Instagram, or they'll see a really high level functioning professional athlete that'll also be doing this, and then they go, right, like I have to do that. So then I've got a program from you, and I go, right, like this is exactly what I need to do. That's fine, but I've got to add in this too, because that's how it's going to get me to where he is. Yeah. So like social media is an incredible thing now, but it's also quite a detriment to a lot of these young developing athletes, because they go, I have to do that to be able to get there. So then they see those things, and then they potentially buy those programs and do those programs, and then they get injured, and then they come to people who, like yourself, who actually have that mindset that it's like less is more. You need to get your basics right, and then we can, like you said, sprinkle those real niche things on top that are going to make you the best. But if you don't have that foundation, if you don't have that box to build on, then you're just going to come crumbling down.
Yeah. Yep. So then when it comes to you, Cam, like, do you break up your year thinking about, okay, if I need to be at Whistler for this period of the year, and that's my, like, I guess time in the sport, so to speak, in this kind of like off off time when you're in Australia, and now it's like, okay, I need to build on these things. Like these are the things that I need to focus on that you want to translate. How do you sort of manage that?
Look, it's hard when you're over and competing, and again, being a small nation, you have to do everything yourself. So that means transporting sleds, maintaining sleds, organising transports. All aspects of the trip is on you. So that takes away a lot of time from training. So, for example, I think for the 9-week period that we were over there racing for Australia, we only got the opportunity to get into a gym, I think it was like 5 or 6 times.
Wow.
So we were racing and training on the track, but where all these other teams could potentially jump in the gym and things like that, we just couldn't. We didn't have the time, or most of the time the energy to be able to do it, just because we were putting so much energy into other things. So that being said, with the season aspect, in the off season, you literally just building the whole time. So I've come back and, I've obviously lost strength, I've lost muscle mass. So it's rebuilding that and building back on that foundation. And then, so that off season per se, when I'm back here in Australia, is just how big can I get? How strong can I get? How fast can I get? So I've got my programming to reflect that, but also sprinkling in there as well. I've got testing for the Australian Federation that comes around in like August, July or August. So you're talking, you've got to peak to get to that point, and then you go away to race potentially in October, November. So then you've got a short period of time then again where you can, I guess, taper off, rebuild again, and then you're off again on to the season.
Yep.
So I definitely try in that off season time to really nail those 1 percenters and try and be there and just turning up every single day. But the minute that you get on season, it's like, okay, it every day is so different. And it's like just so many things are coming up, and you'll get a phone call from the International Federation saying like, "Hey, you haven't got a visa for your sled to get across to the US next week. Like, you guys have got to get onto that." So then we're organising, getting phone calls together, and like figuring things out, just like logistically, like those things that maybe a head coach or like for some of these other bigger teams who have
funding.
Yeah, like a funded person to actually be there and do those things. Then it takes away, I guess, from myself and Reese, who are the pilots, who have to just be like zoned all the time. Like, we are the safety net of that team to get from the top to the bottom. We're focusing on all these other things, and just mentally, like we're taken away from the sport a little bit, because we have to do those logistics in the background. And that's what people don't see as well. It's just like, oh yeah, like we're all bobsledders, we're all here. We're all got the same opportunity. It's like, if we really get down to the nitty gritty, there is things that you guys do a lot better than what we do, and that's because purely you've got those resources, right?
You guys are like a startup almost.
Yeah,
you got to you got to wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
You can't just wear the athlete hat. You got to be like, okay, part team organizer, part manager, part this, part that.
Yeah, but that's where it works really well too, because like Reese having the experience that he has with the last team, and some of the other guys, Joe and Pat, who are absolutely fantastic athletes, and they've been involved in the sport for so long. They know these little things like the back of their hand. So for me, coming into the sport, like I just leant back on them so much and was like, how can I help you to help me to help the team? Like, give me the information to try and help. Like, and that's where it worked really well, because Reese and I just kind of buckled down at the end of each night and just go, all right, fuck, what do we got to get done? What do we got to finish before the next day? Like, can we just go to bed right now and like get the 8 or 9 hours sleep that we need? Or, okay, no, we need to make this phone call. We need to make sure we book this accommodation. We've got to get this car. We've got to do this. We've got to call this person, make sure our sled gets onto a truck so it goes to, 5,000 kilometres on the other side of the country in the next day or two. Like, there's all these little one percenters that Reese and I just had to really dig in and get done just before we could even go to bed sometimes. So.
Yeah. And so for the rest of the team, are they all in Sydney, or are they all over the country?
A couple of the boys are in Queensland, and then there's actually three boys that are down in Wollongong at the moment as well. So there's just me who's pottering around in the Shire. Yeah. Wollongong's like the Shire's little brother. Easy, so I head down there a fair bit, and I train with them down in their gym down in Wollongong. So it's nice. We've got.
So they just doing strength con stuff in the gym down there, or?
Yeah. And these guys come from. So there's 2 fellas, Ben and Sam, and they both come from like weightlifting backgrounds and things too. So Sam in particular he's competed on a professional level for weightlifting. And like I say, they're in a gym. I think it's Base Warehouse or something like that down in Wollongong.
Yep.
And pretty incredible facility. And like I just go down there, once or twice a month and just have a session with them. And that's one way that we can, just stay in contact and see each other heaps, because obviously Australia's a big country. So we've had athletes before that have been in Perth and obviously up in Queensland and, South Australia, like everywhere, right? So the fact that I've got somebody quite literally down the road, or a little hub per se down in Wollongong, like it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, when you were talking about it, like powerlifting is probably a good base for it, because all the force that you need to generate. It's just, can those guys actually move quick?
Yeah, well, that's right. So, we find a lot of athletes will come from like football, like rugby league, or rugby, athletics. So you've either got both of them. So like rugby with having your speed and your strength, or athletics where you've got speed and you're pretty strong in the gym as well. Quite a wide variety, right? So like when you're starting off as a kid, you don't turn around and go, hey, I want to be a bobsledder. Like I want to develop as a bobsledder. Like, when you're 12 and chuffing around, of course you want to play soccer and stuff with your mates. So Australia being that niche country that we are in winter sports, like we always have a base of something else and then pull across to sports like bobsled. Yeah.
Yeah. So you originally started with league, right?
Yeah, rugby league. Yeah.
And so I guess how serious were you into that?
Pretty serious. So I started playing when I was 9. I played at St Pat's at the Shamrocks just at Sutherland there, and played I think 3 or 4 years there, and then moved across to Yarrawarra, and we won 5 comps in a row there with the team that we had, and from that I got selected to play with Cronulla in there through all of their junior league teams, playing a year young some years, and then getting into the under-20s, and I did a full year of training with the under-20s when I was 19, and then the year that I turned 20, I was pretty much told I wouldn't play. So I went to Canterbury Bulldogs actually and just played under-20s with them. Played almost every single game other than maybe a handful that I was injured. And then after that, I went down and played for Collegians down in Wollongong.
Yep.
And played a couple of seasons down there, and I got selected in the under-23s country Illawarra team. And then from that, like that professionalism, I guess, like particularly playing with Cronulla all through the junior league, and then over to Canterbury, and then still playing for quite a professional club in Collegians. That foundation, that base is there. Like it's always been like you have to show up, you have to turn up, you have to go to training. So it's always been pretty non-stop. So obviously with some injuries sprinkled in amongst that, ended up with a reasonable back injury, and then I actually blew out my eye socket playing in the under-23s country team. And I've actually got a titanium plate underneath my right eye now.
Well, you got to tell the story. So what, you can't just go and tell me you got fucking metal in your face
I remember
and not tell me the story about how what was it a shoulder? What was it? What did you run into?
I'm pretty sure I took the kick return. So I took the kick and then just sprinted back. And it was like a high tackle or something. And then so I got up quickly and tapped and just sprinted straight at possibly one of the biggest guys on the team. And I didn't realise it at the time, but this guy's just sat back and just loaded straight at me. And I've just literally just almost like looked him in the eyes like, you're fucking mine, I'm coming for you, mate. And just sprinted straight at him, and he's just launched straight at me, and his shoulder directly hit me like straight on the eye. Yeah. So obviously created more of a seal around like my eye socket, and it just blew the muscles and fat of my eye into my sinus.
The floor of his eye collapsed.
Yeah.
The floor of your
The floor
eye
of his eye socket collapsed. I remember getting the phone call after that happened.
Here we go.
And he sent me, he was in hospital.
Yeah.
And he sent me like the scan. I think it was like a CT scan or something like that. And I looked at it, and literally the floor of his eye, like the bone that supports your eyeball, was gone. And you could just see all like your optic nerve and everything was just like dropped in the floor of this like hole that had been created.
Fuck.
Yeah. So as soon as it happened, I was like laying on the ground a bit dazed, and got up and played the ball, and they called time because I was obviously just scat. I was just like, what the fuck's going on? And then like I was like, no, like I'm sweet, I'm fine. And then obviously the adrenaline started wearing off, and it started catching up with me pretty damn quick. And then like I just felt so nauseous, and like I couldn't keep my eye open. So then like I was just holding my face, and then they took me off, and I was sitting on the side of the field, literally with just an ice pack on my face, and I had no idea what was going on. And then I just started profusely vomiting, like litres and litres of vomit. Like, so they just took me into the shed and I laid down, and then Dad pulled the car around. He's like, come on, like, we'll take you up to the hospital. I was like, yeah, sure, like, whatever. Got in the car, and then I don't actually remember the car ride, but Dad drove from Wollongong up to Sutherland Hospital, and he pulls in, and I remember saying to him, I was like, don't take me to Southo, just take me straight to St George, because like, at this point in time, I wasn't a nurse, but I was just about to start my new graduate year, and I was like, just take me straight to St George. Like, I just knew that it was the better place for me to be. Pulled up, and I get straight out of the car, vomit all over the floor again. It was just terrible. They take me in, and obviously ED's being busy as always. They're just giving me Panadol and things. I'm laying there, and I'm just like excruciating pain. Within, I think, like 3 hours or whatever, I had the CT scan, and then with the scan finishing and the report being processed, I was being transported immediately to St George to have surgery to have the muscles, because the muscle of my eye was actually impinged on the fracture.
Oh wow! So it was like caught on like one of the bones.
It was literally caught. So that was, I had so much pain because it was actually tugging
over the bone
on the fracture to like move my eye and stabilize my eye. So the minute that they realized that was happening, they took me straight to St George, and it was actually plastic surgery because it's so fine. They cut through my bottom eyelid and then kind of just pulled all the muscle of the eye through and pulled it up and just slotted a plate in, and then literally just my eye just settled back on top, and then that's it.
So wait, did they screw the plate in?
No. Like because they can't obviously get in underneath your eye because everything just kind of sits with gravity, right?
Yeah.
So they've just pulled the muscle up enough, like literally just enough to slide this titanium plate through, and then it just sits there. Like whether or not they use like I'm sure they'd use like an adhesive or something to just keep it there for the moment until the bone kind of grew over it.
Cam actually can't go upside down anymore.
My eye just falls out. No, but yeah, and literally straight after that, everything was fine. Like I had full movement back with my eye and everything, but it was a big enough injury that it put me out. I couldn't raise my blood pressure above like 140 or 150 for 3 or 4 weeks just because of how much stress and strain my eye had been under. It was like if anything, like too much pressure goes to your head, like you'll just break more structures. Yeah. So it was just like I kind of had a lot of time to just sit there and think like, oh, do I want to go back and do that again?
Do I want to play
like,
anymore?
What's the go? So then like, I put on some weight and stuff with all that, and then like I just eventually was like, you know what, it's probably not the thing for me anymore. I'm just probably not going to play football anymore. Like, but then I rehabbed like my whole body, got back ready to play footy again because I thought, I'll just give it one more crack. And then day one of pre-season, I literally passed a ball and then I flared up a disc injury in my back. So then I was just like, what, that's me done. I'm not going to do footy anymore. And then, went on the rehab train for almost 3 years.
Wow. So how did you injure your back?
It was a disc injury it was a bulging disc that ended up, I've just lost all height. There's no fluid left in the disc anymore. It was impinging on a nerve. I was getting a lot of that referred pain, nerve pain down my legs. And I ended up, I think there's on the last scan that I did, which was maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, I've got a cyst next to my nerve column now. So everything's stable. I stripped everything back, learned how to do like regular movement patterns and things again, and just started to rebuild from there. So initially I was like this is fucked, like I'm done, I'm going to have surgery, do all this stuff. And then it was actually Jamie who was...
got in his ear.
Yeah, you definitely got
the
in my
facts straight for him.
Yeah, but he I think at the point in time, like he was just about to move out with the boys, and this was when I was just getting into like these conversations with the surgeon, and he's like, mate, he's like, come on, like you have to move out, mate. I got to save money. Like I might have to have surgery. He's like, you're a fucking idiot. You don't need surgery. You're gonna be fine. Like you absolutely, like it's just ridiculous. Everyone's got disc bulges. It's just you're symptomatic now. You'll be okay. And I didn't really listen to him to start with. But then I went and sat down with the surgeon. I was like, look, can this subside? Like, will it get better? And he's like, look, if you do the right things, yes, like you'll be fine. It will take time, but you'll be fine. So I didn't have surgery, and I listened to Jamie. And then, just did the rehab aspects and just stripped everything back. So, went from like a semi-professional rugby league player to then just like learning how to squat and hip hinge again was just, I could bash my head against the brick wall. Like it was just so boring and monotonous, but it eventually all worked out for me. And it took me almost 2 years, but like I got back to being stronger and healthier than what I was when I was playing semi-professional football. So it was awesome, like particularly that one of my best mates who actually had a bit of information to give me and just be like, no, like look at the bigger picture here. Like don't just jump at the first thing that's given to you. Like there is bigger and better things that can happen. Just don't go under the knife. The minute you do that, you're fucked.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I just listened to him and I was like, I just got to try.
Yeah.
I just got to try.
Well, it's funny because, because you guys grew up together, you always, when you first meet somebody, like that impression sort of lasts in your mind. It's like how your parents always look at you and they think that you're their little baby.
Mate, the first time I met Jake, I wasn't a huge fan of Jamie when I first met him.
Come on, tell us the story. We're here.
Yeah, I want to hear this actually.
And I want to hear James' story in
Mate,
response.
Fucking this, eh?
Let's
What
go.
have you got for me?
James is like, oh fuck, I didn't know you didn't like me. You can't.
No, but like we're at school, everything's established. It's year 5. We're coming. The top grade of the school, and this new kid comes along, and you just hear like little whispers. He's like, oh, he's really good at football. He's really fast. All this, and it was like that was me. Like that was my title. And like this new kid on the blocks just coming in. He swooped in, and then like I don't know. I looked at him. I was like, I don't know if I like this guy. Like he's taking everything from me. But then we started to play footy together, and then it just like everything just dropped, and then I was like, all right, nah, I love this bloke.
He's all right.
And now I'm stuck with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
But honestly, I was like, fuck, this guy's taking my title. He's taking everything I've built up over the last 6 years in primary school.
See, I'll give you my perspective now because it was completely different for me, right? If you saw a photo of us two in year 6, mate,
We'll have to get one
Cameron
cropped into
was
this.
like the biggest fucking man child. He honestly could have been my dad. I was coming in looking at this guy going, wow, he's humongous. He's so fast. Like, he must be a legend. And I was just like a small little kid. Like, I had some skills or whatever, but I was just like I was not thinking like I was going to take his title, that's for sure. I was like, he's probably going to eat me.
Oh, man.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's Fuck, so okay, after with the plate, right? So
Yeah.
then did they ever take it out?
No, so it's still in there.
It's still in there.
Yeah,
And
so it's just encased by like bone now. So the bone has just grown over the plate. Yeah. I could have gone back and had it out once. Like ideally, the bone would have grown underneath it, but it started to encase it. So the surgeon was actually just like, well, mate, like we'll just leave it as long as it's not causing you any problems. There's no reason to take it out because then it is another surgery.
Yep.
More recovery time, all that stuff. So he was like, sweet, as long as you can see and you don't have any strain in your eye, you're fine.
Well, he's done a good job because you can't see any scarring.
Yeah, well, because it's plastic surgery, like obviously it's this guy's job to make sure you look all right, right? So he did.
He could have helped you out with
Yeah,
the
he
rest of your
could have
face, mate.
definitely. He did the best with what he was given. But literally, like the scar is like not there. If I pull my skin really tight, and you can just see like a bit of change of color, and you can see the scar. But yeah, he's done an all right job with what he had.
It doesn't go off through the metal detectors or anything,
No,
right?
no, nothing, which is really, really good. So, like, I've had MRI scans and stuff after it, and like everything's fine with it. So,
Yeah.
it's always a good story because you're doing your tick box for scans, and they're like, any metal in your body? And it's like, yeah, I got a titanium plate under my eye, and they're like, what? It's like, yeah, it's there. But yeah, no problems since. So,
Wow.
lucky, very lucky.
So then, why nursing? Like, why did you decide to study that?
Oh, look, mate. To be honest, there is one particular reason that stands out. My grandfather had Parkinson's and dementia. So he was diagnosed quite early with Parkinson's. I think in his 50s he was diagnosed. So I didn't know a day otherwise with him having Parkinson's. So. I saw that deterioration, obviously, with me growing up. It got to the stage where my grandmother couldn't assist him much at home anymore. It was getting too much, so we had to find him a nursing home. Obviously, me being young and not being involved in any of that, I was quite vulnerable to the whole situation too, and so I just wanted to help Pop as well. So we found he was in a home, and then you see the good, the bad, and the ugly of what happens in nursing homes. And that was, I think, like just a real subconscious layer to me wanting to do nursing. I I want to help people. The fact of people coming into hospital and being so unwell and so vulnerable, and their life is quite literally in your hands. They come to you for that comfort. You can help relieve their symptoms and make their journey or their time in hospital like somewhat bearable. I think that to me is something. It's me giving back as well to a very vulnerable population. So I started off in oncology nursing, so that was my first exposure to nursing was oncology. So you're talking all forms of cancers.
Cancer.
Yeah. So and like palliative care and things like that as well. So you know, I remember telling a lot of the stories like to my mates and to my teammates as well, because I was playing under 20s and stuff like that at that time. They were just like gobsmacked that I could even contemplate like me wanting to do that with my life, but it just became second nature, and being able to provide that care to some people and their families as well is just a beautiful thing. They are at the most vulnerable time of their lives, particularly with that palliative care process. Like there's not a lot of positive things that are coming out of it. They're getting lots of terrible news, and if you can just make it tolerable for those people to be in hospital, I think like that's one of the best things that you can do for people. So
Yeah. So and you don't have to speak to it if you're not comfortable about it, but I'm just curious about when it came to the Parkinson's, like what was the deterioration of like his condition like? So like what sort of symptoms, what did you see as the grandson? Obviously it's hard when you probably don't really quite fully appreciate, exactly what's going on, but I guess, from memory, like, what did you sort of experience?
Look, it started off like, again, from memory, I can remember him being very active, still being able to communicate quite well, but obviously having the tremor and things was quite restricting for him, and then slowly seeing it fade into not being able to communicate at all. So seeing that deterioration in communication, just actual verbal communication, was really, really hard, because a lot of the time he'd be there looking at you and you could see that he wanted something and for you to help, but you couldn't determine what it was, and that was the worst part about it. You didn't know what you could do to help him.
Yeah.
Just simple tasks like eating for yourself and things. It got really difficult for him to be able to stabilize with utensils and things like that. So it was hard to watch too, because my grandmother dedicated her whole life then at that point in time to make sure he could still get out and do things, and dressing him and caring for him. It was beautiful to see. My aunties and uncles and dad also getting really involved and helping out with everything too. But just to see someone that you love and just slowly start to fade away, it was really, really heart-wrenching for sure. And being young, it's difficult because you don't really understand like why does this happen to people as well. And that's probably one of the worst things about these neurodegenerative disorders is you don't have a choice.
Yeah,
it just happens. And that's why it's beautiful as well working as a nurse and seeing these families around these people that just literally either put their lives on hold or just make sure that person isn't missing out either. Like just because they've got a disorder or something, like it doesn't mean that their life stops and they don't have the same opportunities as everybody else as well.
Yeah.
So that was the big thing with Nan, was like Pop's going to come too. We've got to get him out. I actually remember one story, and I can laugh about it now, but we went to the zoo. It was me, my elder sister, and I think my little sister was there too, and my grandparents. Walking around the zoo, we'd been there the whole day. It was like 3 p.m. and the zoo's getting ready to close. We're like right down the bottom of like the zoo, so we had to walk all the way back to the top. And we're looking at like, I think it was like the dolphins or something like that. And we're just looking and like I turn around and I was like, Nan, where's Pop? Where's Poppy gone? And she's, oh my God, like he just left. Like,
disappeared.
We had no idea where he went. And so Nan's like freaking out. She's like, just stay here. She ran off to like the security or whatever, and they've made a big announcement. And it ended up that he'd walked down to the ferry because he wanted to bugger off back home. He was saying like, home, I want to go home. Yeah. And like, so the ferry people are like, what's going on? And like they found him down there. So we've sprinted down, we found him, and like, it was just, it's one memory, obviously, like it's not one of the nicest memories to remember, but it was just,
it's funny.
It's funny. Like you can think back about it now and just be like, he was just so done. He's probably just had a day of me and my little sisters just heckling each other and just going fuck this, I'm going home.
Yeah.
Get me away from these kids.
Did he ever? Did he recognize what was happening with him? Like, did you ever see him like get frustrated about like that he couldn't do certain things?
Not that I can remember.
Yeah.
Not that I can remember. Which I think is nice.
Yeah.
And you know, I see it now. Obviously, people get super frustrated, and you know, you being their nurse, they'll actually open up to you and be like, I used to be able to do this, and I used to be able to run a marathon and do all this. Now I can't even put on my socks and stuff like that. So I think it's a nicer thing that I didn't have that interaction with him where he could tell me or show me that frustration with some of those tasks. Obviously, I saw it deteriorate, but I think it's better that he couldn't actually tell me as well. Yeah.
It's a, you know, listen to you sort of talk about it. So my mum has some mental health issues, right? And so, you know, I saw like, just like how you saw like the ins and outs of the aged care system, I saw the ins and outs of the public healthcare system, especially when it comes to mental health. Like, you know, when she goes in there and you sort of look around and you look at like the state of some of the other patients, and you start to think, fuck, is it the right thing that she's here or not? And you know, it makes you question a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And there's no easy sort of answer to it, because like I even got to the point where I was just like, look, if she's just going to be crazy, as long as she's happy, I can't give a fuck anymore. Like as long as they're happy, right?
Yeah.
But then you don't really know whether they're 100% happy, you know, like you don't know how aware they are of those circumstances, right? So it's a really challenging one. And for anyone that's, you know, got a loved one that's gone through like, whether it's like those mental health issues, Parkinson's or dementia and things like that, like it's not easy. You're going to question everything that you experience with it, you know, and it's not to say that it's a test. It's just one of those things. It's part of life, you know. We all eventually end up in the same place anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, but like how we go out, well, that's the question, you know.
Yeah.
And some people, you know, they're here and then suddenly gone in an instant, and others it deteriorates over time. But you know, I sort of always sort of try and bring myself back to at least, you know, like try and remember the happier things.
Yeah.
And my mum's still around. Like don't get me wrong. Like and she's doing a lot better. But like going through those years was some of the hardest years of my life.
Yeah. I can imagine. Yeah. And I think particularly today's day and age, I know we've kind of taken a bit of a darker turn on this, but
it's fine.
Those like advanced care directives, and you know, there's talks about like voluntary assisted dying and things like that now. Like those conversations like are so important to have if in those early stages. Obviously there's hope and there's all those things like for recovery and all of that stuff, of course, but like for the general public, a lot of the time, and I see it really difficult now because we've got these people that will come in and, you know, they're 85, 90 years of age, and we're still treating them for something that might only give them like 3 or 4 months left to live, and we see them deteriorate really, really significantly because we are treating them because of side effects and things, and then obviously it gets to a point where we have to palliate and then they die, and you know, it's having that choice for how you go out as well. Like if you're given that shit card and you go, oh, sorry Cam, you've been diagnosed with dementia or Parkinson's or something, it's okay, what do I want that part of my life to look like? Having that control when you lose the control, I think is probably one of the most powerful things that you can have. Having those advanced care directives in place is like, it's a God save, because it ends up all of the responsibility gets put back on the family or the doctors to make those decisions. But in the end, if you have some of these documents in place, you get to choose how things happen, right? And that's.
But when do you put that in place? Because obviously, when you're already like, if you're compromised, then how can you sort of be trusted to that you're making the right decision if you're already, your faculties are already starting to leave you, right?
Yeah. So that's the difficult thing, right? So it's a very fine line. Though that capacity aspect it's a detriment of the hospital system sometimes. Like people get to that stage and they lose that capacity, and then it's like, okay, so who's their next of kin? Who's their enduring guardian? You get to make the decision now. So it's hard because it does become a very fine line between, okay, I've got a diagnosis, and you lose it sometimes. So it is a very fine line. There's no particular way to say, like, you know, as soon as you get a diagnosis, you should do this. Like, that's not the idea of it. Like, a lot of the time you get a diagnosis and you think about, okay, how can I make this better for myself? But I guess approaching, there is a lot of opportunities for those conversations to be had, and they're just not had. So particularly, like, if somebody does come into hospital and you know, they do deteriorate quite rapidly, but then we turn a corner and we get them better and then they get to go home, then it's like, okay, this is an opportunity where we say, if this happens again, what would you like to actually happen? Do you want us to bring you back, to take you to ICU, to put a breathing tube down your throat? Those kinds of questions that need to be had earlier rather than later. And it's so subjective to the actual person themselves. Because, one thing that might work really well for me is not going to work really well for you as well. So there's no real time frame specifically that you can put on it and like stamp it and just be like, this is when you should be having this conversation. It's so difficult to gauge that.
Sounds like a really big grey area.
Yeah, oh, huge.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult in particularly where I am now in hematology. Like there is times where you're thinking like, why are we doing this for this poor man or lady? Like they're struggling so much that we can see that things aren't improving, or sure, maybe their underlying cancer might be improving, but everything else is just deteriorating. Like we're killing everything else. We're killing all the good things.
Yeah.
We can't get them home now. They can't live their life anymore. There's no quality of life there. They're going to be in a home. Like, what are we doing? So it's always it's such a difficult argument to have. But
it's hematology. So they're dealing with blood, right? So
blood cancers.
Blood cancers. So usually by the stage well, hang on. Let me just perhaps you can provide some insight. So blood cancers. Are we talking like leukemias and that sort kind of thing?
Yep. Leukemias, lymphomas, myelomas.
Yep.
Yeah.
And usually when it gets, because they are treatable, right? Like there's
it's treatable but not curable. Yeah.
So when you say treatable but not curable, what do you mean?
So if somebody has a diagnosis, we can treat it and give them, put them into remission per se, but it will be the limiting factor of their life. So it will be potentially the reason that they actually pass. It will come back.
Yep.
But we can potentially delay that part.
Yep.
Yeah.
Delay like the cancer from getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
And worse.
Yeah. Is that through chemo or?
Yeah. A lot of chemos, stem cell transplants.
Oh, stem cell transplants. Is that a newer thing? That must be a newer thing, right?
Look, I can't put an exact finger on when it was actually brought in. But I know that it's been happening for a good, well over like 10 years now. Like they've been doing it a fair bit. So St George does it. I know Prince of Wales, RPA, like a lot of those hospitals do it as well. And it's all accreditation stuff, right? If the hospital's accredited to do it and they've got consultants who can actually provide that treatment, and obviously their nurses to provide it as well, then obviously they can do it.
Out of curiosity, like what are the stats like on that? Like are blood cancers, like, are they more common nowadays or less? Like, has it always been fairly consistent?
Look, mate, again, I can't really speak for those exact numbers.
Yeah.
I look at it, unfortunately for myself, I look at it quite on a local level, and I look at the people coming into my ward and what we can do for them.
Yeah.
So, we do see people like come frequently and whatnot. But in terms of those diagnosis numbers, then, I can't really speak too much for them, unfortunately. But
so then when it comes to like, because there'd be some pretty hard conversations, right? Because not everybody would opt for chemo, right? There'd be people that would just say, no, I'll just ride it out and, whatever happens, right?
Yeah, sometimes. And that's their choice.
Yeah.
It's totally their choice. They're entitled to that. Again, if they've got that capacity to make that decision, then absolutely. That's their wish, then you've got to go with it.
Yeah. Yeah, fuck, okay.
Definitely says a lot about you as a person, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Because I've done some stints in the hospital, like going through physio.
Yeah.
And when I was in the hospital, I found all of my experiences to be extremely challenging. Like, because you are just with sick people in need all day long. And it can weigh down on you like a fair bit. And the fact that you've been doing it for so long and now at this high level, it's pretty impressive, mate. So good job.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
How do you, I guess, like you need a way to decompress from that stuff, right? Because otherwise, especially probably is, right?
Literally,
that's why you're doing something so crazy, right? Like
literally, gym and like physical activity is literally my only outlet. Like I like to think that it doesn't hit me too psychologically, but post reflection on relationships and current relationships, like I can definitely see that it does unintentionally affect a lot of those things and my attitude and whatnot. But if I didn't go to the gym, I think I'd just be the worst human being on the face of the earth. Like I'd just be so upset and grumpy all the time. Like
because you're like, you know, when that's your frame of reference, it's like you hear like people just making small chat. It's like, I don't have fucking time for small chat. Like people are fucking dying. Yeah. Like it'd be really easy to become like that person, right?
Yeah, it's even nicer now. Me being the manager of a ward. You know, I don't necessarily have a lot of direct contact with the patients and things now, unless like I need to, or like I'm wanting to have that direct contact, which is sometimes I do, and I love doing that now. I get to go back to my roots of why I wanted to become a nurse. But now I get to support my beautiful staff that actually provide that care to these people. Like as if I can make their life tolerable and coming to work somewhat reasonable, because you know none of us really want to work these days. But if I can get them to come to work, do their job well, and go home and feel supported from me, then that's my job done. Like I'm happy. Yeah. I'm happy. So, you know, there's other stresses and stuff like you're saying in the public system. Like, you know, the hospitals are insane at the moment. Like, we're still just scrambling post-COVID. Like, everyone thinks everything's settled and whatever, but it's not. We're seeing higher acuity of patients. We're seeing higher volumes of patients coming through. People are staying longer. People are sicker. The systems are at capacity, and it's continuous day by day at capacity. So, it's,
so when it comes to like, you know, being like managing a ward, right? Like, so you'd have to look at your nurse numbers and all that sort of stuff in terms of managing that sort of stuff. Is there not enough people coming through the system to fill those positions, or?
I wouldn't say that specifically, mate. I think, you know, COVID did play a role on people's perception of life.
Yep.
Particularly the younger generations, they see it as we've got an opportunity to live life. Why would we buckle down in one job? And, you know, gone are the days of you work one job or, you know, 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. Now it's like, I want to get paid more for doing less.
Yeah.
Right. So
well, Sydney's so expensive.
Yeah. Well, that's right. That's right. That's not directed at nursing by any means. Yep. That's just everyone. That's the younger population at the moment, right? So we're seeing people come through and doing the degree, but we're just seeing that retention of staff. That they're looking for easy, not necessarily easier work, but work that is better for work-life balance, right? So either working less hours or working less days. It just that's just what's happening, right? Yeah. So we've got staff and people are coming through, but it's just not a lot of people are wanting to buckle down and stay as long in a career as what other people or the previous generations have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there'd also be like a bit of that burnout element, right? Like just...
Oh, 100%. Yeah. 100%. Even just day-to-day burnout. Like, and you're doing night shifts. You're doing shift work. You know, some people look at shift work and go, oh, you know, you can have a sleep in on one day and all that. And it's like...
No, it's actually worse.
I've just done like 4 night shifts and I've got to have a night off and then come back. Like, and it's really difficult for me as a manager to roster sometimes, because I look at it and I'm like, God, I'm really going to fuck Jamie over here, and he's going to have a really hard week. But, you know, then he gets a little bit of reprieve later on, but got to make sure he knows, like, I know what he's going to go through and support him through it, because otherwise that burnout is going to continue to happen. Like, that awareness and that juggling on the management perspective is difficult, right? Yeah. You want to make sure these people that are happy and healthy and working a reasonable roster, but it's so difficult because you have to have a certain amount of people on the floor to be looking after patients.
Yeah, I think, like as you get older, you really appreciate the ability to have like consistency in your routine.
Yeah.
You know, when you have to, especially for shift workers and things like that, when they work those disjointed hours, it's like, yeah, like you might work 2 days on and then 2 days off, but that's actually, you know, could be worse for you than just working the same amount of time and being able to go to bed at the same time every night, because, well, reality is most people fuck around now before bedtime, and you're on your phone or something, and then you just don't get the amount of sleep that you should be getting, you know. And I think that's probably pretty common on people that, you know, like aspiring professional athletes. They probably don't sleep enough. I know you got a Whoop strap. You know, you've got your. I can see you've got the Apple Watch.
It's just not on.
Yeah,
I was sick of it telling me how much I don't sleep. I was like, fuck, I'm not paying for this anymore.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Like, you know, if you're looking at like the athletes population or anyone that wants to be happy and healthy, you look at any paper and it'll say consistent sleep times, circadian rhythm, all that. Like it is so important. It's the one thing that everybody has access to, but not everybody does well, right? And that's, I'm sure you'd say it, Jamie, with all like the athletes that you've worked with, and it's like you know injuries are happening because, you know, potentially like one of your mates is one of your clients and you know that he's been out 2 or 3 times in the last 2 weeks.
He's partied on the weekend.
I know what they're up to.
Fuck, like no wonder your knee's blown again, mate. Like, you know, you've had 2 big weekends and you probably haven't
You're
slept
dehydrated
properly.
from all the alcohol you drank.
That's right.
I was out there with them.
Yeah.
was giving
Jamie's
them the
there.
shots,
He's
mate.
plying them. He's plying them. And he's like, come see me Tuesday. I know you're going to fuck your knees. So that's the biggest racket, isn't it?
Oh, yeah,
You know?
yeah.
It's like training
He's
with a
genius.
dentist and he keeps hitting you in the face. And it's like, you motherfucker.
I'll fix that
We
for
do
you,
have
mate.
that
Sorry.
joke a fair bit, don't we?
Yeah, it definitely gets thrown around a bit.
Well, that's like all the events I've been running. I'm just making people do crazy shit.
Yeah, let's talk about the events. We haven't even spoken about it.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah, the whole point.
Yeah,
Of it. Shut up, Cam.
No, it's been good. It's been good. It's good to talk about all these different things. So.
So where should we start from the beginning, I guess? Yeah.
Yeah.
The very first event that happened was, I guess, actually, no, we'll take it back a little bit further than that. So when I first started up the business and things and all that, I was working alongside another coach, Dom Soff. You might know him. He's a boxer. He was also working at No Limits.
Yep.
And we just decided that we'd start doing these like little fitness events just to push ourselves or whatever. So we just come up with some stupid thing like run 10 kilometers and do 100 push-ups every kilometer. And we'd be like, does anyone want to do it? And then maybe we'd get like 1 or 2 people come and we'd do the event and then we'd be like, cool, what do we want to do next? So we just kind of kept doing these random little things, right? And then the next one I think was like, oh, we'll do a long beach run and then do like a swim. Like it was just, I don't know. It was just whatever we thought of. We didn't really train for them or anything, which is stupid looking back, but we just sort of just wanted to have a crack and just do some hard stuff. And then one time another friend of mine came to me 6 weeks out from Sydney Marathon and was like, hey, come run this marathon with me, which is an absolutely terrible idea, trying to run a marathon in 6 weeks. I must preface that, but I did it anyway. And 6 weeks later, me, Dom, another mate of mine, James Eccleston, who's also a physio, we ran this Sydney Marathon, and it was pretty fucked. I'll be honest with you. It was trained for 6 weeks, ran the marathon, got it done. Couldn't walk for 2 days, but after that, it sort of got a bit of attention. I think after we did that, and people sort of was like, what have you been doing? Like, why are you doing like these random things? Like. And people started asking questions. And then a couple of my mates, a few of the boys sort of started to jump on board at this point. And one of my mates was overseas. And he'd been traveling Europe and having a good time partying and whatnot. And he messaged me one night and said, hey, mate, like when I get back, can you put on like a fitness event for me? Or like I need to do something to get like my fitness back. And I was like, yeah, sweet. When you get back, let's run a half marathon. And then, like, just to give someone a goal, basically. And, like, that's been the whole point of them is, like, just trying to get more people doing more physical activity, like, just trying to have something to train for. And then we sort of just built it out. I went back to Dom and was like, hey, like, one of the boys has reached out, like, keen to do something. I said, we'll run a half marathon with him. And he was like, yeah, sweet, we'll do it in a weight vest. And I was like, okay, yeah, we'll do it in a weight vest.
How heavy is the weight vest?
10 kilos.
Okay.
So you're only 70 kilos then?
Yeah, he was on the beach eating wraps all morning.
Caught out.
He runs 40 meters. Don't worry about him. Anyway. So then basically I put together like this event, called it Project Y. Like, why the fuck we doing this? And then, I ended up getting about 30 people sign up and wanting to be a part of it. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, we'll put together like a 12-week program and get people building up their running capacity at a reasonable level rather than just like like
Go
I was
straight into
saying
it.
about before,
Yeah.
like going too hard, out too fast, and getting injured. And then the idea, of course, was just to get people moving, get people doing things. So my mate came back from overseas. All the other boys got around it as well. And then we had a bunch of boys and girls like jump in it of all ages, all abilities. And we ran that. That event was like probably October last year.
Mm-hmm.
Had about 30 people come down, and we did like the run together. And then after that event finished up, it went well. Everyone had a good time. We had a little bit of an after party and whatnot. Everyone enjoyed it. And everyone was like, well, what are we going to do next? So then I'd started to sort of capture a bit of an audience.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is cool. This is, it's kind of starting to build up. So I launched up the next project and called it Project AMP. And I was like, for the next one, I was thinking, well, we've done a fair bit of running. Like we did the half marathon, wore a weight vest. That was pretty tough. I want to try to do like more swimming because for me, I'd never done swimming before. Like probably the furthest.
Wait, you live in the Shire.
Yeah,
you don't swim.
I can swim. I just mean like I never did squad.
Okay.
And all my mates did squad.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I want to be a squad swimmer.
No, you don't.
Which
4
I-
hours in a pool is not fun at all.
Which I must say I'm the furthest from. But anyway, I gave it a good crack anyway. So I was like, okay, sweet. We'll make it Project AMP. I thought AMP because like you're an amphibian, you're in the water and
Okay.
you're on the land. That's how that came from. And then that turned into the acronym Any Means Possible because I was thinking in my head, how the fuck am I going to do this? And then I was like, well, I've been fronting the costs of like these events up until this point. Like I'd been paying for like the breakfast and then like supplies for food and drinks and everything and the shirts and whatnot. Although I did make a few people buy the shirts actually. But anyway, so then I was like, oh, well, I'm
Shout
going
out to those people. Hey,
Yeah.
James is actually grateful because you supported him. I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
you didn't get a free one,
Yeah.
but you supported him.
You got a nice
Exactly.
free shirt on today.
Yeah, that's
Beautiful.
before we had sponsors. And then for this event, I was like, well, why don't I get some sponsors? If I get sponsors, I get more people doing it, lower that barrier, build it up a little bit more, and like we can support more local businesses and get more of a team on board.
Yep.
And then, so yeah, the last event I did, which was about 2 weeks ago now, it was a swim into a run, and I designed it in a way that as many people could do it as possible. So there was a few options, like a 5K run, a 10K run, or a 21K run. And then the swimming was like a 400 meter, a 900 meter, or a 1.8K swim.
Mm-hmm.
And you could kind of choose what you wanted to do. And then I provided like a 12-week training program for whatever level you chose, basically. Built up like a bit of a community around that, had 65 people sign up for that, and ran the event 2 weeks ago. With like so much help from everyone, all my mates and the sponsors, like they helped out so much financially and just actually participating and being at the events. Like Two Reds, for example, they made all these shirts for me with all the sponsors on the back. We had No Limits Gym, we had Tempest Wealth, we had Grills on Wheels, which is like a local cafe in the area. We had a nutritionist sponsor the event, Tori. We also had a photographer and videographer who came down, and that was VJ, and he looked after all that, like brought down all the fancy equipment and helped with all that stuff and produced some really good content for us. Who else do we have? We had Come Together Support, which is Dom's disability support company.
Okay.
So he was obviously on board and involved in all the events, which was off the back of a 2-week stint in Thailand from him. So that was a pretty good effort.
Backed it up well.
Yeah, he backed it up well.
Was he on it? Was it when it was a holiday? Or
It was a
training
holiday. It wasn't
holiday?
training.
Yeah, because
He
sometimes
might try
like
to
when people
claim
go,
it was
yeah, I'm going to
training.
Thailand, and they're at like Bang Tao or Tiger Muay Thai, and they're training like
Literally.
twice a day and
Yeah.
living the life.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it was
So-
holiday.
Had all these sponsors jump on board. Did I miss anyone else? Can you turn around for me? Yeah, no, we got them all. So yeah, it was awesome. And then I think everyone had a really good time. And I've already had people saying to me like, what are we going to do for the next one?
Yep.
So we hit the drawing board, and in the meantime, amongst all this, Cam sort of come to me begging for me to help him.
So we're going to Whistler.
No, he's come through, and you know, actually, it all started because he came over just to have a couple beers on the balcony, a bit of a night off, bit of decompression, and we were just chatting, and he was going through all the costs of the bobsled and everything, and he was telling me how it costs like $50,000 to buy a bobsled, and
Wow.
I was like, okay. I've got a good idea. Like, let's do the next project and let's see if we can get some funds together and let's buy a bobsled. And he was like, okay, sweet. So, we basically just started hitting the drawing board and thinking about, well, what can we do for this next event? And come up with the idea of doing, have you ever heard of a Murph?
A Murph, like a CrossFit thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's a CrossFit thing. It's based off like a lieutenant who fought in Afghanistan and died. But basically the Murph workout is like a 1 mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and then another 1 mile run. And the original Murph, you do it wearing a 10 kilogram weight vest, and you just see how fast you can do it. But I was thinking about doing it in a different way and making a little bit of a modified version where we'll do like the same, but we will have like no weight vest. We'll have a surprise finisher leg as well, which the participants will find out on the day. And then just to mix it up and make it exciting, we've decided that we're actually going to make this a $250 buy-in.
Okay.
However, the buy-in can be split between anywhere from 1 to 5 people.
Okay. Yeah.
So you can buy in at $50 each. You can buy in for $250. And when people buy in, they then, whoever wins or whatever team wins, gets an opportunity to win the prize money. To make it even more exciting, the less people in your team, the more prize money you win.
Okay.
So if a team of 5 wins, they win $1,000.
Okay.
But if a team of 4 wins, they win $1,100.
Okay.
A team of 3 will take $1,200. A team of 2 will take $1,400. And if someone wins it by themselves, they'll take $1,500.
So, okay, hang on. So to clarify, when it comes to a team doing the event versus an individual, right?
Yes.
Is it based on the team, so that the entire team has to complete the event, or how's it?
So the way it will work is that each team member will be responsible for one leg of the relay.
Okay.
Okay, so one person might do the run, and one person has to do the pull-ups, and then another person has to do the push-ups, and so on. So you can't share the responsibility of one leg.
Okay.
You have to do that leg before the next team member can start the next leg.
Yeah.
So obviously, if you have 5 people in your team, you might
Should be the fastest, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. You
Ideally.
should.
Yeah.
You should win.
Ideally, you should
Yeah.
win. Yeah.
But if you're an absolute machine and you're willing to either pair up with some other machine or take it on your own and put down $250, I think you should be rewarded for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you should. And if you can pull that off, that's pretty fucking impressive.
Have you got anyone that's going to do it individually?
Well, I haven't
we got
launched
some-
the event
we
yet.
got some
Oh, you haven't
freaks.
launched yet. Okay, so this is part of the launch. Okay.
This is part of the launch.
All right, so
We've got
listen
some
up, people.
freaks and mates, mate. So
Yeah.
maybe.
I reckon there's some guys that could, and girls,
Yeah.
that could smash through it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically that's what we're thinking. And we're going to call it Project Camo, which stands for Can Australia Make the Olympics?
Ah, there we go for bobsleigh.
For
For
bobsledding.
bobsledding.
Yeah.
And a bit of a play on words as well with camo.
Yeah, camo.
And then it's a
It's a military
military
workout.
inspired workout. So if you didn't get that for the audience. But yeah, basically that's the rundown of the event.
Yep.
We're going to try to get some sponsors on board, obviously, of course, get it all pumping, get it happening, and it should be a pretty fun day.
Yeah, wow.
Mm.
So, throughout this whole process, right, there's a lot of things that you would have learned along the way from like the very first event.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, James is like, fuck, I did this first one and I'm broke. to then going, okay, I need to make this a little bit more viable so that if we want to keep doing it, like it's not going to be a financial burden on you, so to speak, right?
Correct.
So I guess, can you just speak about like, the process of like going out, reaching out to sponsors?
Mm.
Did you have to create like a pitch deck and say to them, hey, I need you to sponsor me?
Yeah. No, I didn't.
Yeah.
No, I think people and companies have just kind of seen what I've been doing And a lot of the time, I've had people either come to me and say like, "Oh, we want to get behind it." Once they saw like the ball rolling and saw some other people doing that, and then other times, actually, that's kind of it. Really, I've never actually directly hit up someone and said, "Hey, can you sponsor this?" I've just kind of maybe put it on my story or just release like, someone is sponsoring it, and naturally other people have wanted to jump on board as well. A lot of those sponsors from the previous event were people involved and doing the events, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we'll jump on and sponsor it. Like it would be great for our brand as well." And that's kind of how it's grown organically.
Yeah.
And now I suppose this time around, we're probably going to try to get more sponsors and maybe ask for like a little bit more money and things like that. So we've created somewhat more of like a pitch in a sense like that. So, or something we can at least.
Well, there is a goal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
it's
this
not
is
just
what
like
you're going to get out of it.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Because
it's not just a challenge, right? Like, can you put sponsors on your bobsled or?
You definitely can.
Yeah.
You definitely can. The hard part is you can't put them on your bobsled in the Olympics.
Okay.
But for the entire approach, you can plaster stickers all over.
Yeah.
So I could just be one big undisputed sled.
bobsled.
The logo right at the front
right
of
at the front, wherever you want it,
Yeah.
So, we got like training suits and stuff that we can put it on, our race suits, we can put it on, our helmets, like absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so there is an opportunity for the
Exposure.
branding to be
Yeah.
exposed,
Yeah, definitely.
absolutely.
and then you might get some cool videos.
Oh,
you should
yeah.
definitely put some sponsors on the bottom of the sled too, in case.
I actually was talking to a guy that I knew, and he was like, "Well, like, where's like the biggest part of the sled?" And I said, "On the bottom, but you don't really want it there because then I have to crash for them to see." And he's like, "Well, you crashed in like the last race you did, didn't you?" And I was like, "Shut up, idiot!" Like, come on.
Honestly, the ones that are going to get the most views are those ones.
Yeah, that's
true. Like.
Maybe I'll put my sticker there.
Yeah, good idea. All right.
Yeah, it's the algorithm, right? Like, so Instagram likes to reward the people that watch, and I don't know if your feeds are like mine, but I get like all this dash cam crash footage, like, and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, why am I watching this shit? Like, watching some poor bugger get cleaned up.
Yeah,
It's like,
getting smashed.
all right, well, you got me again, Instagram.
Yeah. Damn it.
Did you ever see Derek Lewis's Instagram? Remember
Yeah.
when he had that?
Yeah, well, that's case in point, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just eyeballs, right? Because you don't really, you wouldn't otherwise be looking for that kind of stuff. But when it's fed to you, you're like, okay, I'll watch it.
All you got to do
It's
is
like,
click
that
on
was
it once
interesting.
as well, and then
It feeds you the rest of
the other videos jump on the algorithm,
it.
and then you're like, oh, well,
Yeah.
now I like this guy.
So when you buy this bobsled, you'd probably have to buy it and store it at Whistler, right? You wouldn't buy it in Australia
No.
and bring it here.
No,
Put
no,
in my
absolutely
garage?
not. Yeah, well,
Well, there's space. We did look. It's nice and neat
there
down
wasn't
there.
much space. Charles, please can I? But yeah, like so I guess the sled that I'm looking at the moment is over in Germany. So we're not racing in Europe at the moment, so it's a waste of time having it over in Germany. So there's another cost that I've now gathered is trying to locate it to North America. The Australian Federation's got like a big sea container that they store in Lake Placid, which is just north of New York. And there's a track there, and it's one of the most technical tracks in the world. And so we've got like a little hub, I guess, again there. So ideally, I'd want to be trying to store it there. It's just, again, it's more costs. There's always a cost associated with it. You can't just kind of hold it somewhere in the hope that someone will just kind of look after it for you kind of thing. So it'd be stationed there if and when I finally get my hands on one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so then the next Winter Olympics is what, 2026?
26, yeah.
And where's that going to be held?
Italy.
Italy.
Yeah, in Milan, Italy.
Okay, and that's why they're trying to get that bobsled track
Yeah,
done.
that track done, yeah.
So will you guys, if they do get it done, do you get to get any practice sessions on that particular track?
Yeah, so that's that rush that they've got. So you actually have to race on the track. I think in the World Cup circuit would actually race on that track
Okay.
prior to the Olympic Games. So then people have at least some exposure to it. And it's not just like, hey, do your 8 training runs on the Olympic track and then good luck kind of thing. So they are racing the clock to get it completed. But it's obviously a lot of money and land to be moved. So, yeah, whether or not it is completed is a different story. But there was questions whether or not the sliding sports would actually be held in Italy. There was talk potentially they would have had to move to like Eagles in Latvia or in another country close by, which just defeats the purpose of an Olympic Games, having that Olympic community to be around. So there was a lot of backlash to that when those conversations were being had. But supposedly the Italian government's turned around and is like, no, we've signed a new contract with a new building company. Like, it's going to get done. Like, everyone just chill out.
Yeah.
And we're all sitting here like just watching each brick almost.
Chill out, literally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah, well, so what happens in like the off season? Does the ice on the track melt and then you just see concrete?
Yeah, literally. So it's all, or most of the tracks are built with like big like concrete slabs. So in Whistler and Lake Placid and some of the other tracks, they actually do like summer bobsled. So they've got like a bobsled with wheels on it, and you drive down the track.
I'd like to do that.
I feel like
It's
that'd
a
be
bit safe.
I'd much prefer
It's
that.
not really.
No, I reckon
safer,
that's
but
more dangerous.
Yeah.
Because like
I
when you
just
got
don't like the
wheels,
cold.
when you got wheels, I just feel like there'd be that one Waldo who will just like keep it hooked in and just flip over the edge, right?
Yeah,
Can you flip over the edge?
You can't flip over the edge. No, the
They
tracks
do.
are real safe. Like they've got like roofing,
Okay.
like lips over the actual the top of the corners and stuff. So if you actually just didn't steer, you'd just go straight at the roof, and you'd hit the roof, and then you'd just come down and you'd hit the wall
Can
down
you
the
barrel
bottom.
roll? Could you barrel roll?
You could barrel roll, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, well,
I
like you
want to
wouldn't
see that.
You wouldn't go like up. You wouldn't go like up and over like that. Like
Just fall.
yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah, and you need to
Just-
slide down the road
Yeah.
on your head the rest of the way.
Pretty much.
That would be worse on concrete when you
Oh,
crash,
absolutely.
right? Like
Oh.
you get up and your helmet
Ice is
would just
pretty
be like
hard.
half ground off.
Yeah, but like there's more friction with the concrete,
Oh
right?
god, it'd be horrible. Wouldn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, gravel rash.
Yeah,
I'm not thinking
You'd,
about
you'd have to do
crashing.
it in a motorcycle suit. Like
Yeah,
you'd
yeah.
need something like that to.
Well, so funny thing is we have to wear a burns vest underneath our race suits, or like underneath your training suit. So it's like a Kevlar material that protects your shoulders. So if
ice
you
burns.
yeah, from ice burn. So if you do tip, it's up to the athlete to actually maneuver themselves like off the ice. So
Wow.
for me being in the front, I've kind of got the cowling of the sled to actually protect me.
Yeah.
Whereas the guy in the back, like his entire back is exposed. So if he's not holding on and gripping himself and ripping him, pulling himself into the sled, his shoulder could just be compressed against the ice.
So how about the legs? Like how far can he go that far forward to get himself into the sled?
No, absolutely.
Because his legs would be up against you, right?
Yeah, because I'm there, right?
Yeah.
So my whole body is in front of him, and his feet kind of, they can either like tuck up beside me, like around my back, or underneath my seat, pretty much.
Yep.
So like he's like feet.
Nowhere to go.
Yeah, there's nowhere to go. It's literally like upper body strength. You're like gripping onto like the framing of the sled and like holding yourself in.
And you're trying to tuck your head in as much as possible, so
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, well,
Dragging.
there's that aerodynamic aspect to it. So like the person's tucked in behind me.
Yeah.
But then when you're upside down, if you keep yourself off the ice, then you're not going to get any burns or any. Like you're not going to smash your head against the wall if we're like coming around the corners and you're just sliding around, you whack into a wall. So
Yep.
yeah, it's pretty dangerous when you are upside down. That's the idea. You want to get down.
You want to avoid that position.
Yeah, that's right. That's
It's,
right.
it's kind of like when you watch those rally drivers, like it's one thing to be a rally driver and have the balls to drive rally. It's a totally different thing to be the navigator. Like and you're basically reading directions and you're not in control of this fucking thing.
Yeah.
And you've got to put your faith into this guy that he's not going to fucking kill you, right? Like
That's
has
you.
Has your
you.
brakeman ever like been like, Cam, what the fuck? Like, what have you done to me?
Oh, look, once they get a little bit more experience, like,
Yeah.
and they know the tracks, and they can provide that feedback and be like, Cam, like, fuck, you came out of corner 9 at Whistler and we fucking hit that left wall so hard, like, holy shit, like, and then like we can have a conversation about it, and like obviously if you tip, they're not going to be happy, but I feel like so bad anytime I've ever tipped, and I'm like just trying to like hug them and kiss them and tell them like I'm so sorry, and like just hope they're okay, that they're going to be able to come back up to the top with me again and just go straight back down. But there is times where like
Gets heated.
yeah, well like they'll feel like why the fuck did you steer like that, or why did you do this? How did we hit that wall? Like tell me what happened, kind of thing.
So
So
you can feel the spikes in your ass.
yeah, literally. But if you did that, I'd probably just tip it on purpose and just be like, that's what you fucking get for putting them in my butt.
Fair enough. So I guess from the Australian bobsled team perspective, like, do you guys have sponsors, or is it are you guys looking for sponsors? If you are, this is the time to shout them out or shout out.
We're definitely looking for sponsors. We don't have any other than I guess Undisputed for myself personally at the moment.
Yeah.
but we don't have any other sponsors currently. So we are building kind of a bit of a profile to approach some sponsors. A lot of people talk about it and like, oh, you've already raced. Like, why didn't you have sponsors? And I felt bad to go to people and be like, hey, can you sponsor me to try this sport?
Yeah.
I wanted to give them some results, right? So we had some pretty decent results on our first breakout season. So including some top 10s and some wider podium finishes, being like 5th and 6th. Quite good results for like a first time ever actually racing sleds. But absolutely, like it's an expensive sport, but with the right, financials involved and the right people around you, like literally the sky's the limit. You can go so far with this sport, and the more time you can spend at tracks, obviously the better you get. So the more time I'm spending here in Australia and training here and trying to find these sponsors here, it's obviously taking away time that I can be spending on a track, but obviously without setting up that foundation, I'm not going to be able to get there.
Yeah.
My money is quite limited in terms of, I've just spent a whole season over there, and I'm rebuilding the funds now and, getting ready to season plan for the next season. So having, I guess, a relationship as well with the sponsors. So to actually, not only am I getting benefit from them, but what can I actually give to you to actually build your business as well? Like I'd rather it be a partnership than just be like, hey, yeah, like let's, I'll take $1,000 and I'll run off to Whistler. Like, oh yeah, look at this, here's a map photo. Like obviously all that stuff's involved, but it's more to me than just like jump on board.
Yeah.
Like I want it to be like a bit of a
Value
relationship.
exchange.
Yeah, very valuable exchange. Like I'd rather have that relationship than just, it be one way kind of thing. Yeah.
Is there so I guess this is the time to plug socials, guys. So is there like an Australian bobsled team social media or anything like that, or?
There's the main page of the federation.
Yep.
So it's Bobsled Skeleton Australia.
Yep.
So they put up a lot of the content for all the athletes that are around. Obviously my personal account, Cameron Scott 333, is where all of my content is posted.
Yep. What's the 333 for?
Mate, in all honesty, like I played centre a lot when I grew up as a kid. I was number 3, and then I don't know. Honestly, my cousin has raced internationally for Australia in BMX, and his number was 333. And I think just being younger, and I was always looking up to my older cousins, and then number 3 was my number, 333 was his, and then it's just unintentionally, like in the last couple of years, I just started putting it there, and I was like, well, I'm kind of copying him here, but shout out to Alex if he ever watches it. It's like, that's why it's 333.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
there you go. But yeah, so obviously being at home, most of my posts there's not a lot of posting at the moment, but a lot of my content comes around Bobsled at the moment and promoting my friends and other companies around me that are doing really good things. So I like to promote Jamie's business a lot because I know how much knowledge he has to give to people and how much benefit they can get from his input into their lives, not only as a health professional but also as the man that he is now. So again, that's that valuable exchange that I like. It's that word of mouth and talking about those companies when the door is closed and you're not talking about bobsled, but you are talking about the people that are supporting you with things. So that's where a lot of my social media stuff comes. And I know Jamie plugs a lot of things on his different profiles because he's got quite a few of them now. So
Go, let's go.
Well, my physio page is James O'Leary Physio, and then Undisputed is Undisputed PR. They're on Instagram and Facebook, and then I have a Facebook group which is called the Undisputed Project Community, which is a group for anyone doing the projects and the events and the challenges. And yeah, that's pretty much it from me. I mean, you got Strava and you got all the other things too, but we'll keep it simple.
What's Strava? Hang on.
Strava's like just it's like Instagram or Facebook for workouts.
Oh, okay.
So if you do like a weightlifting session, or you go for a run, or you go for a swim, it and you record it on your watch, it can automatically upload to Strava, and then you have friends on Strava, and you can see like what they've been up to and how their running's going and stuff like that. Okay. Or if you're a physio, you can use it to track your patient's training loads.
And that's what you use it for?
Yeah.
Without them knowing.
So I'll just be...
Injury coming.
Unfriend him.
Book in Thursday.
Yeah. No, it's actually a really useful tool because like I'll have patients and clients who will come back to me and have like a flare up, and then I'll literally show them their Strava and draw on top of it and be like, this is what I told you to do. This is what you did.
Yeah.
And this is why, like, this is, you know, if you just listened, you wouldn't have to be here basically.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this could be the moment, you know, Australia's cool runnings moment.
Could be.
But Cameron Scott, James O'Leary, thanks
you.
everyone.
Thanks, Johnny.
Thanks, Johnny. Appreciate it, mate.